out across the courtyard and the kitchen, brought through that staging area by the stairs and over into the dining area. That kitchen, by the way, is open, so as you go out the back and make your way to the left toward the front, you may enjoy stopping in there to see them preparing food of that particular period. Larger social event like a dance or a ball would be held here in this space. I had a ball. I would stand down here between the portrait of King George III and Queen Charlotte. This would be called the preference end of the room. Each couple paying their respects to the governor as they entered, and then he would start the event off by doing the minuet, the lady perceived to be the most important lady there. In turn, the master of ceremonies is a rear in order of social importance. Probably not to them. Keep in mind who's coming here to Williamsburg. It is not a typical place. This room known as the supper room, and it doesn't look much like a supper room in its present state, but they normally would not leave things set up in a room. When one two long tables here set up in an elegant manner, foods being sweets and meats, things like dried fruit on cone-shaped devices that they would pick off and eat, bars upon several kinds, cookies, jellies, a trifle, 4 or 5 kinds of meat. Then down there at the end, this big round cake called the rich cake, very appropriately named. 7 pounds of butter, 5 pounds of sugar, and 36 eggs in it. The real beauty would be that they could sit down and enjoy eating something of that nature without anyone badgering them about cholesterol. Are we obsessed or what? Montauk was well liked. His successor, Governor Dunmore, was much more abrasive and conditions had changed. It resulted in him going out through this very door at 2 a.m. on June 8, 1775, headed for the York River to get on a boat and exit the area. And remember, they set up their own government. Patrick Henry, the first governor, 76 to 79. Jefferson in 80. The capital moved to Richmond at that time. A year later, in 1781, the building burned. That 150-year gap up until 1930 when this structure was completed. That 150 years in there is what Williamsburg is all about, getting us back into the food, the clothing, the architecture, landscaping, general conditions and environment of the 1700s. Even on a day like today. More fun than sitting home reading a book, right? Sometimes we think of historical events as being something a long time ago and not really relevant to today's world. Well, there may be an exception here. Many of those involved right here at the palace and throughout Williamsburg played a major role in making the decisions that led to the Revolutionary War and ultimately to the system of government that we enjoy today. They were striving to come out from under oppression here in the 1700s. Is anyone in the world trying to do that today? How about tens of millions throughout the world striving to come out from under oppression? Where might the people of Eastern Europe, the Soviet Union, and other areas of the world get an idea of what democracy and freedom is all about, never having experienced it? Where might they get inspiration and a role model and an example? Well, we know with Mr. Yeltsin's recent visit here, one of the primary places they're going to look is right here to this country with its unique system. There is none other like it in the world. So what this small group contributed to back in the 1700s might not simply have provided the system we enjoy today, but maybe helping a great many more throughout the world at the present time, being a much greater degree of democracy and freedom. That completes our tour. Have a nice remainder.
Is that the Capitol down there at the
The George Wythe House. We're going to go in a second.
Can you see it? rain again.
Take a look at it and explore it on your own, which you've learned a little bit more. George Wythe, a familiar name to anyone at all in the room? Familiar? Lydia Broadnax, a familiar name at all? Yeah. How about Thomas Jefferson? That's got to be familiar with you. Okay, good. George Washington? Okay, now we're on a roll. All of those people were on the property in the 18th century. Obviously, George Wythe is here because he lived here. Mr. Wythe was a very prominent attorney here in Williamsburg. Lived in a plantation down in Hampton, Virginia, where his family's plantation is called Chesterville. It's where Langley Air Force Base is today. He's very, very popular in politics as a clerk in the House of Burgess, later as a Burgess, who was the mayor of the city of Williamsburg, very active in learning about government. Lydia Broadnax was his slave. I really didn't expect you to recognize her name at all. She was the cook on the property. She, as well as 15 other slaves, would have been living in these outbuildings. That one which you're in right now that you're going to see. About 7 different outbuildings back here. Thomas Jefferson was a student of Mr. Wythe's. Mr. Wythe often would take in a student just one at a time. Really did not have that much time to spend with students, but he'd bring in one student, teach them to read law, which is how you became an attorney in the 18th century, and that's exactly what Jefferson did. Jefferson, at the time that he came to the House, was 17. His father had died 3 years before that. Mr. Wythe had no children, so there was very much a father-son relationship between the two. A great deal of respect between Jefferson and Wythe. Jefferson constantly referred to Mr. Wythe throughout his entire life, both for political advice and personal advice. Mr. Wythe did sign the Declaration of Independence as the events began to lead up towards the American Revolution. George Washington was a fellow Burgess in the lower house of the legislature, often coming over for dinner when he was in town here in Williamsburg. But George Washington also used this house as his headquarters before the siege of Yorktown began in 1781, so he would have been on the property as well. So I mentioned those people and named those people because they were the ones who were here, coming and going in some fashion or another in the 18th century. Mrs. Wythe would have been responsible for overseeing the work activities of the slaves who would have been living in these outbuildings back here. What you're going to be seeing is a very typical gentry house with very untypical people living in it. The Wythes very strongly disagreed with the institution of slavery. They did not feel it was a necessary evil. They felt it was immoral. Mr. Wythe, because of this, ends up freeing most of his slaves. Any slaves that he had received through his wife's marriage from his wife's family, he gave back to the Tolliver family. Most of the slaves he freed continued to work for him as paid servants. While they were living here, before he gave them their freedom and their manumission, he was educating them. He went as far as to educate 2 of them in Greek and Latin. He taught Michael Brown how to be an attorney, which Michael Brown, because he was black, could never practice law in the court systems, but he knew how to read the law. Same thing he's teaching the young men in the house, he's teaching out here, making the point to his contemporaries that slaves were not pieces of property, they were people who were able to learn, who had an intellect. So a very different man in that respect altogether. So you can take a look at his home, you can take a look at where Lydia Broadnax, as well as I said, the other 15 slaves would have been living. You can take a look at where Jefferson learned law and was educated, and take a look at where George Washington had his headquarters prior to the American Revolution. What we're going to invite you to do is look at the outbuildings first, and it appears to have just missed it. We had a little teaser for a second there with the rain coming down. So you have some time to look at the outbuildings.
No, look at the birdhouse. Pretty big house, isn't it? Good size room.
Where are you from?
Delaware County, it's just the side of Delaware. And, you know, what's strange is where we live, okay, which is different from here, it's like, so I live in the oldest street in the state, the oldest county in the state. And that's where it's
Nobody gets like 6 feet.
there's never been anything to tie it all together. In the city, the Philly, the first bank in the United States is in the same county. They built this building in the city.
So if you're gonna build a house, just show me very south. Who do you want moving in next to the house? So that's the one problem we have here today at County Williamsburg is, not that we have just one, but maybe one historic district cannot show you how common Virginia is. Because they'll tell you that this is my voice. As we look at today, people of the upper middle class to the even the slaves that are living here are living 100% better lives than they were. So that was probably the last of it.
That could be part of your Kit Kat. Thank you very much.
Well, if I get up at 4:30 in the morning, of course I'm hungry.
It's a magazine where they store weapons. Here's the courthouse of the town.
Chimney.
What's this over here?
Huh?
What's this over here?
Well, it used to be a tavern, but it's private now.
Hi, is it raining out again? Come on, boy. This rain won't let up, will it? Head back,
Another
boy.
store. Can you do it while you're walking? Double chin. This is the big thing around here is the cabins. We're gonna skip that. Oh dear.
What's this? The Capitol building?
This is the Capitol in the rain. Unfortunately. Both lanes are muddy, so turn this way, Brian.
Capitol building. This was moved over here from Jamestown just before 1700, and the college was already here. William and Mary College was already here. Named for Queen Mary. You can hardly see at this time of day. This room on a cloudy day, but Queen Anne was the Queen of England at the time that the building was completed, and the building was dedicated to Queen Anne. You're in the hall of the House of Burgesses, and this is the 1705 Capitol building. It had a two-house government system by this time. The lower house was the House of Burgesses. A burge is a small town or community, and the burgess is the representative of the people in that small town or community. So that's where the name burgess comes from. Elected representatives. The other house is above stairs on the other part of the building, and the upper house is the governor and his counselors who are selected by the governor but have to be approved by the king. Legislation initiated here has to go to the upper house. If it's passed there, it goes over to England, and the king and his privy council approve it, it becomes a law. When we have differences of opinion between the lower house and upper house here, those problems are resolved in the joint assembly room, and you'll be going up there during this hall here. The Speaker of the House has the big chair there. It was John Robinson for about 28 years, and people that were trained in this hall here, who became famous and leaders of our country in the early parts of our country's life, were George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry, and a lot of the people, Edmund Pendleton. Of course, the Carters and the Burroughs and the Harrisons and the Birds, all those people were in and out of this particular session. To be qualified to run for the House of Burgesses, you have to be male, white, 21 years old or older. You had to own property, and you could not be a Catholic. You thought if you were Catholic, you had your allegiance to the Pope and not to the King. You had to have the same qualifications to be able to vote. So most of the white males over 21 had enough property to be able to vote, and they did. This was a very important historical space you're in because of the training that people got here made them qualified to become leaders of our early country. I want to let you go above stairs and meet some of the rest of the people who were trained in here by seeing their portraits on the wall above stairs. And you'll be seeing 3 Gilbert Stuart originals in that group of above stairs. So now if you will
more you try, things will be pretty durable.
Maryland and Virginia. Virginia, however, got involved in an argument. That argument did not include the new stadium that is to be built here. Virginia took back 34 of her square miles, brought the city down to 66. Within the city limits, population approximately 750,000, which must also include the surrounding states and counties in suburban Maryland and Virginia. Since many people live in those areas but work and do business on a daily basis here. Brings the area population to 3.5 million. About 3 million of those you'll be seeing going home during rush hour. We're traveling down the Avenue of Heroes to enter the city of Washington, D.C. As long as we're on this side of the river, we are still in Arlington, Virginia. We'll be crossing a cobblestone bridge. Under that, the body of water known as the Boundary Channel, the official dividing line between the city of Washington and the Commonwealth state of Virginia. You are now crossing the Boundary Channel, and welcome to Washington. If you look to your left, through the trees, sorry, to your right this time, straight right, you'll see a flat roof building. It's kind of light green in color. That's the Pentagon, the largest federal office building in the world. Let me give you an idea of how big it really is. There are 4 more concentric Pentagon-shaped buildings within those outer walls. There's as much below ground as you can see as above. If you walk all of the hallways, you'd be walking for 17 miles. It's enough telephone wire to wrap around the equator of the Earth 7.5 times. Workers drink enough coffee every day in that building to float a battleship. About 2,000 pounds worth of coffee get used in that building every day. And there are 284 bathrooms in the Pentagon. Looking now to your left, skyscrapers. The city of Rosslyn, Virginia. They're not in Washington. The buildings are taller than the Capitol. The center island is to President Theodore Roosevelt. The steeples behind it, the campus of Georgetown University. On top of the hill is Washington National Cathedral of Saints Peter and Paul. Buried there, President Woodrow Wilson, and also the famous deaf and blind educator Helen Keller and her teacher Anne Sullivan, made famous in the story The Miracle Worker. At River's Edge is Georgetown, the oldest section of the city of Washington. The white building with the bronze columns around it, the John F. Kennedy Memorial Center for the Performing Arts. And behind it, the curved building is the Watergate Complex. Known at the time President Nixon was in office, the Democratic National Headquarters were located there. You are 4 miles north of National Airport, which is for domestic flights only, and 17 miles north of Mount Vernon, the home of George Washington, and served as the first White House. Passing between the Arts of War statues and arriving here at the Lincoln Memorial commemorates the 16th President Abraham Lincoln. He held the nation together during his most tragic years of history, the Civil War. He lost his life only a few days after General Lee surrendered from that war, watching a play called Our American Cousin at Ford's Theater. Assassinated by an angry actor named John Wilkes Booth, carried to the home of the Peterson boarding house across the street from the theater, where he died the next morning, carried then to Springfield, Illinois, where he is buried today. Ford's Theater and Peterson House, as well as the Washington Hard Rock Cafe, are located near our stop at the Museum of Natural History. It's a short walk away. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this bus will be going on at this time to the White House in the Washington.
That's the Lincoln Memorial.
What if she tips it sideways?
Wait, over there anyway. We do it. The guard on this Literally, I was
To the left is the Lincoln Memorial. At the base are the 36 columns, which are representative of the number of states which were in the Union when President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated April 14, 1865. Inside is the 19-foot statue of President Abraham Lincoln entitled The War of Presidents. Also inside are writings from his Gettysburg Address and Second and Arnold. To the right is 140 panel black granite wall, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, which was designed by Maya Lin, 21-year-old Yale College student. Inscribed on the wall are the names of 58,183 Americans who are missing in action or who died as a result of the Vietnam conflict. They're listed in order of casualty from 1959 to 1975. Over the area of the 25-mile-per-hour sign and a grove of holly and elm trees, you might be able to get a glimpse of the seated statue of Albert Einstein. The statue was sculptured by Robert Burns. It sits on the grounds of the National Academy of Sciences. The National Academy of Sciences is a private organization which was created in 1863 for the research, investigation, and reporting of all matters of science and art. Next to the left is the Federal Reserve with the Fed, which is our central banking system. Primary responsibility is to control the supply of money. We have 55 member banks, and this morning the Board of Governors met to analyze the rates for commercial and personal loans. The next building to the left is the Department of the Interior, the principal conservation agency of the United States, responsible for fish, land, wildlife, and park resources. Bureau of Mines, Bureau of Indian Affairs are under the auspices of the Department of the Interior, as well as the park to the right, Constitution Gardens, which is a 42-acre man-made garden. In the center is an island, and on that island is a memorial to the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence. The next building to the left is the Organization of American States. 32-member nation organization was created in 1890 from countries from North, South, and Central America. The OAS is a regional agency of the United Nations. The next statue to the left is in memory of Jose Ortega, the man who led the fight for Uruguayan independence. And the next building is the House of the Americas. It's part of the Organization of American States. Inside is a museum dedicated to Latin American and Caribbean modern art. of the White House. We'll get a closer view. You might want to save your film. Area for those waiting to take the White House tour, athletic events, and also during Christmas time, under the theme of Christmas, there's an exhibit entitled The Passion of Peace. You begin to look to the left of the trees, you'll see the front view of the House of the Americas. The three archways are for Central America, South America, and North America. The next building through the trees to the left is the Daughters of the American Revolution. Constitution Hall, they have a museum and a genealogical library where you can research the family tree. The next building next door to that is the American Red Cross, which was founded by Claire Martin in 1881. It's the national headquarters for the American Red Cross. And next to the left front of the bus building with the crane on top of it is the old executive office building. It was originally built to house the Department of War, Senate, and Navy, and now it's the office building for members of the Vice President and President's staff. Next to the left, we'll see the south portico of the White House. The White House was the first public building to be built in Washington. The Federal District. Cornerstone was laid in October 1792. President and Mrs. John Adams moved in November 1800. If you get a little to the left, you get a view of the south portico, south line. See the famous balcony, which was added during the Truman administration in 1946. White House provides public tours Tuesday through Saturday from 10 to 12. They start giving tickets out from the blue and white booth to the right front of the bus as early as 8 a.m. and people are usually in line as early as 7. This is our stop for the White House. Okay, thank you for those who joined us. My name is Vanessa, I'm your narrator. Thaddeus is our driver. Our next stop will be the Washington Monument. I'll review for you the direction the bus will be taking and the stops we will be making. You can follow along by looking at your adult tickets on the side. It has 2 columns of information. This bus will be going to the Washington Monument. From the Washington Monument, we will be headed points east, and we'll be making the following stops: the Art and Industry Museum of the Smithsonian, National Air and Space Museum, Union Station, the U.S. Capitol, National Gallery of Art, Museum of Natural History, and Museum of American History. If you'd like to go points west, when we get to the Washington Monument, you'll reboard at the sign that says West Mall. The bus will then take you to Bureau of Engraving and Printing, Thomas Jefferson Memorial, West Potomac Park, the Lincoln Memorial, Arlington National Cemetery, and the Kennedy Center. To the right is the Washington, President George Washington. Construction began in 1848. And due to political and financial difficulties, construction was halted in 1854. When construction was resumed in 1880, though they went to the same source of marble to continue building, they had to go to a deeper strata in the marble, and hence 1/3 of the way up there's a change in color on the Washington Monument. Washington Monument was dedicated in 1885. It was opened to the public in 1888. You might be wondering, how tall is it? The Washington Monument is 555 feet, 5 1/8 inches tall. There are 897 steps to the top. The first elevator to be installed was a steam-point mechanism, which was not considered to be totally safe. As a result, only men were allowed to ride. Women and children had to continue to walk all the way up the 897 steps to the top. It was fortunate for everyone that they eventually installed an electric elevator, safe enough for everyone to ride, and then they closed on the steps for public access. It takes approximately 70 seconds to ride up to the 500-foot high platform at the top, where you can look down and get a beautiful view of Washington. The monument is open from 8 a.m. to 12 midnight. Admission is free of charge.
It depends. It's almost all, it's a lot of groups, a lot of school districts. Actually, right now, the line's usually cut because we close at 5 o'clock. It's a long line. That's right. Sorry. I'm thinking of my last hour, but we start at 9 every month.
ja. Komm, wie heute hier sein? Ja? Das wird auch nicht viel anders natürlich. Oder?
Hier ist ein Old Post Office, es ist schon.
Ja. Sehr ähnlich.
Hey, was ist denn dann das denn hinten? Ja, das ist Bausteigen. Das ist ein Umweg, oder? Ja, genau.
Fleet Industries Museum, and this is part of the Smithsonian Institution. The Smithsonian is made up of 15 museums. 14 are located here in Washington, D.C., and 1 in New York City. It's estimated that it'll take you 24 hours a day for 2.5 years to see everything that's on display in the Smithsonian, and this is only a third of their actual collection. So, looks like you all are going to have to take a long vacation. The Smithsonian was founded by an Englishman named James Smithson. Smithson had never been to this country, but he admired the American Revolutionary spirit. So when he died, he willed his fortune to the United States to open an institution that would further the knowledge of man. Now, I hope when he said this that he meant women too. I'm sure he did. Right, the Department of Agriculture, founded by Abraham Lincoln. It's directly or indirectly involved with putting the food on your table, the clothes on your back, the wood used to build your houses. It also does a lot of research. And you notice on such things as eggs or meat, the stamp USDA, that stands for United States Department of Agriculture.
You want to ride around the Capitol and not get off? Is that what you want to do?
I've already done that.
If you're interested in catching the Smithsonian Metro, orange and blue lines, I'll point out where that's located in just a moment.
Yeah, I want to ride around the Capitol.
If you look to your left, you'll see an area of bushes. This is the Smithsonian Metro stop. Again, just to our left, that area of bushes, the Smithsonian Metro stop. Just ahead of us to our right, part of the Smithsonian, the Freer Gallery of Art. This houses Far Eastern art. Unfortunately, it is closed for renovations. Behind the Red Castle, 2 underground Smithsonians, a Museum of African Art, and the Sackler Gallery of Art, which also houses Near and Far Eastern art, both of which close at 5 o'clock. And just to our right, the original Smithsonian Institution building, called the Red Castle. It's modeled after a 12th century Norman castle. Inside you will find the Smithsonian Information Center, where you'll find facts about the Smithsonian and other points of interest in the Washington, D.C. area. We're now approaching our stop for the Arts and Industries Museum. Here you can see exhibits dedicated to the 1876 Philadelphia Centennial Exhibition. This is also the stop for the Smithsonian Metro, the Red Castle, and the Sackler Gallery of Art, and the Museum of African Art. Ahead of us to our right, another Smithsonian, the Hirshhorn Gallery of Art. This houses modern art. If you keep going back, if you have an empty seat, please, if you could raise your hand so this gentleman could have a seat. Thank you very much. Again, just to our right, Hirshhorn Gallery of Art houses modern art. You can find works there by Picasso, Matisse, de Kooning, many others. To our left, part of the Hirshhorn, the sunken sculpture garden. Now, maybe through the bushes here you get a glimpse of a statue of a group of men standing together. That is the Burghers of Calais. It's by Rodin. Just ahead of us to your right, the Air and Space Museum. Here you can see Lindbergh's Spirit of St. Louis, the Wright brothers' Kitty Hawk Flyer, John Glenn's Friendship 7. There's a moon rock that you can touch, Spacarium, and a movie theater where you can see several films for a small fee, among them To Fly, which takes you on a hot air balloon journey, and it feels like you're in a hot air balloon. Also, if you're hungry, there are 2 restaurants inside, one the Flight Line, the other the Right Place. And this museum closes at 7:30 this evening.
Look out, you guys. Excuse me. Scott, wave. Over here, Scott.
You figure it out. You're a big boy. They're not that complicated anymore.
Control 563 Heavy, roger. Clear for takeoff, runway 9 left.
Canyon Tower, United 841 is holding in position, runway 4, ready to go.
United 841, roger. Hold in position, runway 4.
The 3-minute rule applies to aircraft parking on parallel runways separated by less than 2,500 feet. It applies to aircraft parking on parallel runways.
Canyon Tower, Transworld 563 Heavy, rolling runway 9 left.
Roger.
Canyon Tower, Twin Cessna 56 Yankee is holding in position, runway 9 right, ready for takeoff.
Twin Cessna 56 Yankee, hold in position, runway 9 right.
Less than 2,500 feet.
Remains for the northbound controller to get passengers safely to the terminal.
All the other streets are laid out crisscross. All the other streets that side. See the big circle of green? Again. The big circle of green.
adesso c'è un po' di microchio, però non ho preso.
Yeah.
Now, especially around Union Station, and ask everyone, please remain in your seat. Do not stand up for any reason whatsoever while the tram is in motion. Please wait until we do come to a complete stop and the doors do open to disembark the tram. Also, please keep hands, heads, arms, small children, and cameras inside the vehicle at all times. It'd be a real shame to lose your child's head this late in the day. So please keep everything inside. Also, hold on to your tickets. That is your open field. Is the future site for the American Indian Museum. Will be the 15th building of the Smithsonian Complex, scheduled to be completed in 1999. Now you may want to get your cameras out and ready. On your right you'll see the U.S. Capitol, on your left will be the Washington Monument when we take this left turn. Now if you notice anyone jogging around the mall, those are all government workers. That's what they do for a living, is jog all day. Look for them there, or volleyball right there if you're good enough. On your right, the U.S. Capitol, second public office building in Washington, D.C. The cornerstone was laid in 1793 by George Washington. Now, the original Capitol building is not the middle section like most people imagine. Back in 1793, the government didn't have enough for the whole building, so they built the two chambers, which are now where those small green domes are located, now the wings of the building. Then the rotunda area was added to connect them. Then the Senate side, which is on your left, was added. Then the House of Representatives, which is on the right, was added. The dome, which is 90 million pounds of wrought iron, was completed during the Civil War. Even though there was a lack of materials and manpower, Abraham Lincoln said the dome must be completed for an active symbol of the rebuilding of the Union. Above the dome, you notice the statue. That statue's name is Freedom. Most people mistake that for an American Indian, but that's not an American Indian headdress she's wearing. It's a Roman-type helmet with eagle feathers adorning it. Now above the House and Senate sides, you notice there are flagpoles. When the House and Senate are in session, flags are raised above the flagpoles. Odds are good the Senate and House won't be in session all week because of the Republican convention. If you look to your left, this is the U.S. District Court building, and next to that, the Canadian Embassy, only Ford Embassy on Pennsylvania Avenue. The building now on your left, the Francis Perkins Department of Labor. This is named after the first woman to head a department in our nation's government. She was given that position by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. She was also the head of his Department of Labor when he was governor of New York. Next building on your left is the United Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners, one of the oldest trade unions in the United States. The great irony about that building is that the building for carpenters is made out of marble. On your right is the Robert Taft Clarion, a 27-bell tower dedicated to the son of our 27th president, William Howard Taft. But Robert Taft was a great statesman in his own right. He was a senator and ran for the presidency 3 times. Friends called him Mr. Republican. On your right is the Senate parking garage. On top of the garage, one of the most beautiful rooftop gardens in the city. As you go past the garage, you may want to get your cameras out and ready. You'll see the Senate side of the U.S. Capitol with the fountains. These fountains illuminated at night. Most popular colors, of course, red, white, and blue. And on your left is the Teamsters Union's headquarters. Our next stop is Union Station. This is the best place to grab a bite to eat. Over 15,000 square feet of eating space. Anything from Chinese food to Mexican food. And if you're a gourmet, there's even McDonald's inside. Also 120 shops, anything from political memorabilia to a model railroad train set. Also there's an active train station inside. You can take a train from Union Station to anywhere in the continental United States, Canada, Mexico, Alaska, and Hawaii. Just making sure you were listening. You can't take a train to Hawaii unless you paddle really fast. Also, there's a red line subway stop here at Union Station. Now, as we enter the circle, you'll notice the 55 flags. Those are the flags of the 50 states, 5 territories. Quickly look to your right, third flag in. That's the state of Virginia's flag, the most important flag along the road.
See the rest of it, they will come back.
In the middle, a statue of Christopher Columbus. On the left, an American Indian, that signifies the New World. On the right, a bearded man, that signifies the Old World. In front of Columbus, there is a winged creature, a replica of a prow head of a ship, symbolizing discovery. Behind the fountain, there are 3 American flags. Those are symbolic for the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, Columbus's 3 vessels. On either side of the fountain, you notice there are 2 lions. Those lions symbolically guard the entrance to our nation's capital. Since Union Station was the entrance to Washington, D.C. before the invention of the airplane. Above the entrance to Union Station, you notice there are 6 statues. Those are symbolic for fire, electricity, agriculture, freedom, knowledge, and mechanics. Now, not only is this a beautiful building on the outside in the neoclassical style of architecture, but on the inside, just incredible looking. Those same size statues, a marble staircase that will take you down to the food court. And in the railroad station portion of the building, the most copious use of gold leaf on a ceiling I've ever seen. Beautiful inside. On your right is the Judiciary Building. This one building will consolidate the 8 buildings our judicial system is now located in. It will house former Supreme Court Justice offices as well as courtrooms for training judges. Now if you look to your left, behind the fountain, there is a large bell. This is the Freedom Bell, a replica of the Liberty Bell. However, this is twice the size of the Liberty Bell and has no crack. This bell also rings. It rings the key of F for freedom. If the Liberty Bell were to ring, it would ring in the key of G. Now, we're not at our stop just yet, but if you want to go to any of the shops, the eateries, or the train station I mentioned, just go through the 3 entrances on your right. If you want to go to the subway stop at Union Station, just go to the left of the building where there's a large M at the top of a brown column with a red band underneath it. After our stop here at Union Station, our next stop is the U.S. Capitol.
It's pretty the way
Keep hands, heads, arms, small children, and cameras inside the vehicle, becoming within inches of some large buses, especially the metro buses of the city. And the metro bus drivers drive like maniacs. We should know some of them drive for Tromobile. Also, remember to hold on to your ticket. That is your reboarding pass. You can get off the train and then reboard another train that will buy that stop in their 10 or 15 minutes. But please remember, and this is very important, we do end our service at 6:30, so you should be on a tram heading in the direction of your final destination by 6 o'clock. That's in a little more than 15 minutes. Designed for Washington, D.C. went to a Frenchman named Pierre Lafont. He designed a city with wide avenues and circles. He was a friend of Washington's who fought with him during the Revolutionary War. But it seems that when he was designing the plans, the city commission and him got into a little fight. The city commission decided to fire him. George Washington had to ask him to leave, and when he left, he took the plans with him. Therefore, his 2 assistants, Andrew Ellicott and Benjamin Banneker, who were American surveyors, who had been memorizing the plans and had to write them down as quickly as possible. So the plans you see for the city today are known as the Ellicott Plan, after one of the surveyors. We're now going up Capitol Hill. When Pierre Lafont saw this hill, he said it was a pedestal waiting for a monument. And that's why he placed the Capitol where it is today. Originally, this was Jenkins Hill. Jenkins Farm was on the hill, and there were cows grazing on the hill even when the Capitol was built. That's why they had to put the bullfinch gates around the Capitol to keep the cows from grazing on the front steps. On your right is the Russell Senate Office Building. On your left is the Dirksen Senate Office Building. Behind that, the Hart Office Building. On your right are where the Clarence Thomas hearings took place. On your left are where the Iran-Contra hearings took place. Also, if you notice anyone in a blue suit, white shirt, red tie, that's sort of the congressman's uniform. That's what they wear on Capitol Hill.
but they don't usually walk around outside. There is a tram system that connects the House and Senate offices.
It's true. It's true.
She works on Capitol Hill and she doesn't believe me.
Nobody's here. I know. They're all hoping to get reelected. I know that.
Yes, folks, the Republicans are all done in Houston. The Democrats are hoping to get reelected somewhere in their own states, but second parking lot was open. Somebody's got to be here. This tram system that operates between the House and Senate offices and the Capitol. Congresspersons and their assistants are allowed on the tram unless there's a vote in the House or Senate. Then only congressmen are allowed on the tram. Private citizens are allowed on the tram. But if there's a vote in the House or Senate, then they're only allowed on the tram by invitation only, with an escort of the congressman who gave them the invitation. Now, persons in lobbyist groups are allowed on the tram anytime they want to go to anyone's office they want to, no questions asked. And if you know about the government, you know why. In the War of 1812 and 1814, when the British invaded the city, they came to federal office buildings and burned them down, came to the White House, burned that down. Then they finally came up to the Capitol, started burning that down. But they had been burning so many buildings in the city that a thunderstorm started out over the city, especially over the Capitol. The rain from the storm quenched the fire of the Capitol before it really had a chance to start. So the foundations of the Capitol were saved. They were able to build by the Capitol easier? Double comparative. Easier than they could build back the White House. On your right is the Senate side of the U.S. Capitol. On your left, the Reserve Officers Association of the United States, and next to that, the Methodist Group. Two interest groups on Capitol Hill that deal with those topics. The next building with all the columns on your left is the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court. Motto, equal justice under law, 24 columns with 24 hours of justice. The woman on the left, the contemplation of justice. The man on the right, the execution of justice. Now, if you would like to go into the rotunda area of the Capitol, that is open until 9 p.m. tonight. Capitol grounds open until midnight. Just go to the left of the staircase where you see that man walking up the stairs. That's where you can go for the rotunda area. Also on your left is the Library of Congress. This is the Jefferson Building. To the right of that, the Madison Building. Behind the Jefferson Building, the Adams Building. If you do get off here, another tram will be by another 10 or 15 minutes. After our stop here, our next stop is the National Gallery of Art. Folks, that person you saw on your right is a real live assistant to one of our congresspersons. Isn't that just amazing?
I love joking with him. My friends who work on too. She works on Capitol Hill.
Library of Congress.
She has a nice $7.
Let us see inside there.
Have your tickets ready when you board. You're boarding all the way back to the second tram. 3 seats on the right, 2 on the left.
Good afternoon and welcome aboard Tumblemobile. My name is Ed. I'll be your narrator. Our driver's name is Danny. Next up is the National Gallery of Art. On your left is the Library of Congress. This is the Jefferson Building. To the right of that, the Madison Building. Behind the Jefferson Building, the Adams Building. There's over 100 million items in the Library of Congress. They accrue 7,000 items daily. Also, that translates to over 500 miles of shelf space in the 3 buildings. Also, no one has a Library of Congress library card. You can't check books out of the Library of Congress. What you can do, though, is go to one of the desks in the 3 buildings. Sit down at a desk, write the number of the desk you're at, the book you want, and they will bring that book to your desk in about 15 minutes to an hour, depending on where it is in the complex. Now, if you're on the Jefferson Building, say you need a book brought from the Madison or the Adams Building, they will bring that book to your desk. You don't have to go to the other buildings. There's a series of conveyor belt systems and pneumatic tubings that connect the 3 buildings. Also, if you tried to go inside the Jefferson Building and noticed it was closed to visitors, it's still open for researchers, but you can't go in just visitors. They're putting new security systems in the building. It seems that people have been checking out books, whether they wanted them to or not, ever since they bought up Thomas Jefferson's original library for the starting of it. Next building on your list, the Joe Cannon House of Representative office. In the basement of this office, there is a cafeteria, and they serve bean soup. The reason they serve bean soup is that Joe Cannon loves his bean soup so much, he ordered it every day from the cafeteria, and it's still on the menu today. Congressmen can buy a bowl of the bean soup for 25 cents. Regular citizens, it's $5. No, just kidding, it's $2. $2. for bowl soup. Next building on the left, the Longworth Building. And the building after that, the Sam Rayburn office, the largest of all three House of Representative offices. It's appropriate that it should be the largest since Sam Rayburn served as Speaker of the House the longest. He served in that position for 17 years. The next person to serve almost as long was Tip O'Neill. He served for 12 years. On your right, you'll notice the House of Representatives signed to the U.S. Capitol, the world's largest legislative chamber. On your right, the U.S. Botanical Gardens. On your left, the Frederick Bartoli Fountain. This was designed and built by the same person who designed and built the Statue of Liberty, Frederick Bartoli. This fountain is one of the first uses of electricity in the outdoors. Humphrey Department of Health and Human Services. Originally, this was Health, Education, and Welfare, but President Carter decided to give education its own department. This therefore became Department of Health and Human Services. If you notice, if the building has no windowsills, has to protect it from the dangerous and predatory bird, the pigeon. The next building on your left is the Cohen Office Building, home to the Voice of America, which broadcasts in 43 different languages. The original intent for the Voice of America was to broadcast into communist countries. But when the Soviet bloc fell, there was a debate as to whether the Voice of America should remain. But since there are still nations under communism, it remains here today, celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. As we take this right, you want to look to your left. The large white building with large windows is the old NASA headquarters. New NASA headquarters right here on your left. The building now on your left is the Air and Space Museum. In the glass enclosed area, the two eateries, the Right Place and the Flight Line. From your seat, you get a beautiful view of the U.S. Capitol, which is on your right. You may want to get your cameras out and ready. On your right, you'll get a beautiful view of the U.S. Capitol. On your left will be the Washington Monument. Next up is the National Gallery of Art. On your right is the East Building. Inside, the only untitled Calder mobile in existence, also a cafeteria next to a waterfall in that building. On your left is the West Building. Inside, the only Leonardo da Vinci on-premise display in the Western Hemisphere. Also inside, a cafeteria next to a sculpture garden. Now, if you want to go from the East Building to the West Building, you don't have to walk across the street ahead of the tram. There is a tunnel that connects the three buildings. Or excuse me, the two buildings. If you look to your right, the West Building, you notice the building has no windows. That's to protect the paintings from ultraviolet radiation from the sun. Also, the air in this building is circulated every 90 to 120 seconds to keep dust from settling on any sculpture. You can also get off here and walk across the mall 200 yards to the Air and Space Museum. That museum open until 7:30 tonight. You can also get off here and go to the U.S. Archives. If you get off the tram, go to the sign, go to the stoplight ahead of the tram, walk right a block, you'll come to the large brown sandstone building. That's the U.S. Archives building. After our stop here at the National Gallery of Art, our next stop is the Natural History. Before we get there, I'd like to point out several large brown sandstone building is the U.S. Archives building. Inside, the Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights, and U.S. Constitution. Those documents are all encased in amber glass, with then injected with helium to preserve them. Also, every night, those documents go down 20 feet to a shockproof and fireproof case located 20 feet below the building. Also inside, but not on display, are the Emancipation Proclamation, the Kennedy files, the Watergate tapes, and the transcripts from the Iran-Contra hearings. Little documents all out to see just yet. Folks, that was the air conditioning just went on. The Archives building with the Spanish-style roof is the Justice Department building. Behind that, you notice a large clock tower. That's the clock tower for the old post office pavilion. In the pavilion, there are some shops and some eateries. You can also go all the way to the top of the clock tower. And from the top of the clock tower, you can see something you can't see from the top of the Washington Monument, which is the Washington Monument. You're in the building. Behind the Justice Department building, the building with the overhanging roof, is the FBI headquarters. Next to that is the Hard Rock Cafe. Our next stop is the Natural History Museum. Inside, you can see the Hope Diamond, the world's largest blue diamond. Dinosaur Hall, the Insect Zoo, which has a tarantula feeding, and you can pet a hissing cockroach. The Human Evolution Hall, several cultures from around the world, a living, breathing coral reef, and the Sea Life exhibit. And there's a temporary exhibit going on right now known as the Seeds of Change, which displays the 5 seeds brought to America, such as the horse. One of the interesting things about this exhibit is that the entrance is a huge castle made out of 1,400 corn cobs. Now, if you are looking for the Smithsonian Metro stop, you can get off here, walk across the mall on your left to a large brown column with a orange and blue band underneath it. That is where the Smithsonian Metro stop is located. If you do get off here, another tram will be by another 10 or 15 minutes. After our stop here in natural history, next stop is American history. Be on your right with a Spanish-style roof. In this building, people write with gold pens. There's also gold leaf on the ceiling and the floors. This building really gets jumping around tax time. On your right, everybody already knows what it is, the IRS building. Everybody cheer. Such enthusiasm. You don't have to pay them, I don't. Next up is the American History Museum. Inside, you can see the flag that inspired Francis Scott Key to write the Star-Spangled Banner. First Lady inaugural ball gowns, Judy Garland's ruby slippers, and the Scarecrow's costume from the movie The Wizard of Oz. George Washington's military uniform during the Revolutionary War. Abraham Lincoln's top hat, Foucault pendulum, and Victorian-style ice cream parlor, some of the best ice cream in the city. Also inside is the Information Age exhibit, where you start off with a barcode, like you get on the back of your groceries in the grocery store, and go through the exhibit. At the end, they give you a printout of what you've done in the exhibit. Also antique bicycles, antique automobiles, and the last steam engine in the United States. If you'd like to get off here, another tram will be by another 15 or 20 minutes. Please remember that our service does end at 6:30, so please be on a tram by 6 o'clock, heading in the direction of your final destination.
I saw it. It was quite unique. We ripped the front end off your car. We dented our license plate, but took the front end right off the car. It was a beautiful thing.
Transfer point, especially late in the day, so everyone listen very carefully. Take out your adult tickets. On the back there are two columns. One says eastbound, the other says westbound. After our stop at the Washington Monument, this tram is going westbound. The Bureau of Engraving and Printing, Jefferson Memorial, West Potomac Park, and then to the Lincoln and Vietnam Veterans Memorials. From the Lincoln Memorial, you can transfer to the Arlington Cemetery, to the Kennedy Center, or back on the Washington Mall tour for the White House. So if you go to Arlington Cemetery, stay on this tram. Now, if you'd like to go eastbound to Arts and Industries, Air and Space, Union Station, the U.S. Capitol, National Gallery of Art, Natural History, or American History, which you just left, you need to get off the tram and go to the sign that says East Mall. Once again, this tram is going westbound. Bureau of Engraving and Printing, Jefferson Memorial, West Potomac Park, and then to the Lincoln and Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Now I'd like to ask everyone to please remain in your seat. Do not stand up until we do come to a complete stop and the doors do open. Also, please keep hands. The Washington Monument. Interesting story about the monument. There are 897 steps in the monument. In the early days of its opening, there was the 897 steps and a steam elevator that took 25 minutes to take the ride up. Women and children had to take the stairs, whereas the men were required to take the steam elevator. The reason for this is not because of discrimination, but they decided the steam elevator was unsafe for women and children. So the women and children had to walk up the 897 steps. But in order to quell the men's fears on the dangerous 25-minute ride up, they were served wine and cheese on the elevator. Whereas the women and children didn't even get water at the top or at the bottom. And by the way, that's my favorite story in the whole city. Now they have an elevator, no stairs, stairs are closed, elevator takes everybody up, and everybody back down. On your left, this red brick building is the past home for the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. If you notice the large windows, the early printing process required large amounts of sunlight, thus the large windows. Now going under reconstruction for the Department of Agriculture. The building next to that is the Holocaust Museum, will be the second largest Holocaust museum in the world when completed in 1993. The building next to that with all the columns is the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. This is where they make all the money, from $1 bills to $100 bills. They also print postage stamps, food stamps, presidential invitations, and military diplomas. Tours are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. If you want to get tickets, the tickets are given out there at the gray booth. Tickets usually run out about 11 o'clock, so you want to come here early. It never ends. Our next stop is the Jefferson Memorial. On your right, the Jefferson Memorial. Our next stop is around the tidal basin. The reason we need a tidal basin here is the Potomac River is a tidal river. Tidal out into the Inlet Channel Bridge, which keeps this area from flooding, and then out from the Outlet Channel Bridge. If you notice the small knobby trees around the tidal basin, these are the cherry blossom trees. A gift from the people of Tokyo to the people of Washington, D.C. First person to plant the cherry blossom tree around the tidal basin was Helen Taft, wife of our 27th president. On your right, the Jefferson Memorial. Jefferson was our 3rd president, vice president during the Adams administration, secretary of state during the Washington administration. He was also writer and signer of the Declaration of Independence. He also built his home Monticello. He also built the first campus buildings for the University of Virginia, where he was its first president. He invented the swivel chair, the automatic double doors, and the wire coat hanger. On your right, a 14-foot tall statue of Jefferson, also 55 columns. The columns plus the statue equals 56 for the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence, of which Jefferson was one. From the other side of the memorial, you get a beautiful view of the Washington cityscape, especially the White House. Jefferson's looking towards the White House. He's looking towards the buildings. A tyrant never enters the White House. He despised tyranny of any form. After our stop here at the Jefferson Memorial, our next stop will be West Potomac Park, and then to the Lincoln and Vietnam Veterans Memorials.
That was quick.
If you do have a seat next to you in the second tram, please hold your hands up so that people can see that there are Potomac Park. Does anyone need to get off at West Potomac Park? So put your hands. Okay, nobody needs to get off. You're sure? You're positive? Okay, I'll stop. If we have to. On your right, you may want to get your cameras out and get a beautiful cityscape view of Washington, D.C. On your right. Everyone turn to your right. Quickly, turn to your left. There's the Pentagon. Beautiful, isn't it? On your right, a beautiful view of Washington, D.C. The area we're entering now is West Potomac Park, site of the first and second airmail attempts. The first attempt left this field was flown by an amateur pilot. He was supposed to go to Philadelphia and then New York, but he was so nervous when he left the field he flew south, kept flying south, ran out of gas in Virginia Beach somewhere. Next attempt left the field the next day, same amateur pilot. Took along a professional pilot to Annapolis, then the professional pilot said to him, follow the Chesapeake Bay. Well, he did that, but he forgot to tell him it's an estuary. It turns into a creek in Pennsylvania. So he kept following it, but then he found the Atlantic Ocean. But then left, flew south again, ran out of gas. Both attempts were failures. Both attempts, that was carried by train. This is our stop for West Potomac Park. Next stop is the Lincoln and Vietnam Veterans Memorials. Next stop is going to be the Lincoln and Vietnam Veterans Memorials. On your left is the future site for the Franklin Delano Roosevelt Memorial. It will be a park within a park with reflecting pools, benches, and a large bronze image of the president. Interesting story about that memorial is that when asked about a memorial, Roosevelt said he wanted one no larger than his desk. That's located behind the Archives building in the city. So I don't know how happy he's going to be about one that's going to be about half the size of the park when completed. Sign on your left describes the memorial. And on your right is the polo field in Washington, D.C. If you do enjoy a game of polo, polo played here at 2 p.m. on Sunday, weather permitting. On your left is the Potomac River. Potomac and Algonquin Indians were a trading place, which is where Washington, D.C. was at the time the river was named. Go in the opposite direction, the tram is traveling 17 miles upriver. They'll come to Mount Vernon, the home of our first president, George Washington. The Potomac River starts out as a stream in West Virginia, winds its way down for 297 miles, all the way to the Chesapeake Bay. On the opposite side of the river right now, that's Arlington, Virginia, my home. Now if you look to your left, there's a mansion at the top of a hill. Everyone see the mansion? It's a little hazy. Would y'all see the mansion? That's my house. Actually, no, that's the Custis Lee Mansion, Arlington House, on the grounds of Arlington National Cemetery. Inside the house, some pre-Civil War furnishings, some of which were owned by the Lees. And from the front of the house, you can see what General Lafayette said was the most beautiful view of Washington, D.C. I believe it still is today. On your left is the John Erickson Memorial. He was designer, builder, inventor of the Monitor, the ironclad vessel that fought the Merrimack, also the inventor of the screw propeller, which all ships and submarines use today. Inside the Lincoln Memorial, a statue of Lincoln, 19 feet by 19 feet tall, known as the War President. If you continue around past the reflecting pool, you'll come to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, which has the names of 58,183 persons. trams. Now, after our stop at the Lincoln and Vietnam Veterans Memorials, this tram is going to Arlington National Cemetery. So if you want to go to Arlington Cemetery, stay on the tram. After we drop everybody off in the Cemetery Visitor Center who wants to take the tour, this tram is then going to be coming back here to the Lincoln and Vietnam Veterans Memorials and then most likely out of service. You can get off the tram, go inside the Lincoln and Vietnam Veterans Memorials, make that your last stop. You can also go to the Washington Mall stop. That will be the first stop we pass on the right. That's where you want to stand if you want to go to the White House, the monuments, museums, Union Station, or the U.S. Capitol, Washington Mall stop. If you want to go to the Kennedy Center, we operate a shuttle between the Lincoln Memorial and the Kennedy Center. Your ticket's good for the shuttle. For that shuttle, you want to go to the sign that says Kennedy Center. That will be the next stop on your right. Once again, this tram is going to Arlington National Cemetery. Now, if you want to go on the Washington Mall tour, you'll want to stand on the sign on your right. That tram will go to the White House, monuments, museums, Union Station, and the U.S. Capitol. Sign on your right. Next sign on your right is the Kennedy Center. That sign will take you from the that tram will take you from the Lincoln to the Kennedy Center. We're now approaching our stop here for the Lincoln Memorial, and then after this, we are going to the Arlington National Cemetery Visitor Center. This tram is coming then back to
Well, once again, this bus is going to go out of service at the United States Capitol building, which means everyone either has to be off the bus or is planning to take an unscheduled trip to. So, any way you want it.
What about Union Station?
Union Station, that does fall in between the White House and the Capitol, so we will be able to get you there.
My camera went out.
Oh, okay.
White House.
Wait a minute.
We got this bus crossed over.
Well, when I'm going to catch things, they didn't.